I was thinking the other day,
Is there any more splendid relationship in this entire world than that of loyal sibling?
even though V2 is a psychotic immortal who has a strange tick where he must say, "oh yeah," all the time,
Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Oh yeah?
Stop it!
Where was I? Alright, V2 is crazy, but he's also correct. I enjoy the bond between siblings, especially when it's an important part of a story, including some of my favorite anime. Demon Slayer is one of those shows that also features a story about a strong sibling bond. It actually has many examples of this, and this year, I finally experienced a show that many consider to be the GOAT of anime. An obvious exaggeration, but what isn't is that the show is phenomenal. It's something that I've wanted to talk about for the longest time. But if my previous polls and viewership has proven anything, if it ain't Code Geass, then you ain't watching. So since you guys want Code Geass content, I must tie something in Demon Slayer to Code Geass. After spending many hours, it finally dawned on me. They are both about a sibling relationship. Lelouch and Tanjiro's reasons for living, their goals, and their actions are all based on the welfare of their sister. Both siblings have different approaches that are worth discussing, since each one has its strengths and weaknesses. Just to clarify, it's not an indictment of either Lelouch or Tanjiro, as I believe that both are good siblings, despite what other people might say. So no one is better, instead there's more than one way to solve a problem. In other words, nothing is perfect. Before starting, there will be obvious spoilers for any anime in the Code Geass universe, and the same applies to Demon Slayer. I haven't read ahead in the manga, so some of my theories or predictions may be incorrect.
All our tasks at hand have been cleared.
Stories tend to have a call to action, something that gets our heroes going. In this case, it's an event that happens to both Null and Nezuko. After Muzan turned Nezuko into a demon while killing the rest of her and Tanjiro's family, Tanjiro vowed to do two things. He wants to turn his sister back into a human, doing whatever it takes, and to make sure that the last thing that Muzan will ever see is his blade. Now, luckily for Tanjiro, turning Nezuko back into a human also involves Muzan, as it's theorized that since his blood creates demons, it could also reverse the process. And of course, the only way to slay Muzan is to become a demon slayer, which is what Tanjiro does after going through over 2 years of intense training just to pass the final selection. As luck would have it, he met up with a woman named Dr. Tamayo, who's also a demon, but she's working to destroy Muzan, and she wants to help cure Nezuko by turning her back into a human. And the way she plans to do this is to use blood samples from different demons. So Tanjiro helps her out by collecting blood samples from different demons, including members of the 12 Kizuki. Tanjiro's motivation comes from several things. The first one, and I believe this to be true, is that he has survivor's guilt, as he was not able to be with his family and therefore feels responsible for what happened to them. So helping Nezuko is a means of redemption. In addition, he doesn't want Nezuko to be lonely. Eventually Tanjiro would grow old and die, and while Nezuko would live on, that idea bothers him because Nezuko would be very lonely. And of course, the most obvious motivation, his rage towards Muzan for what he did to him and his whole family. This rage he has continues to grow throughout the series as he continues to witness demons kill more and more humans, and also demons being tortured by Muzan himself. Lelouch's whole life changed when V2 killed his mother and created the cover-up, and during that cover-up, Nully was crippled. Then later on, Charles used Geass on her, which caused the blindness. Lelouch, until the very end, never knew of either of these things. Instead, he assumed that someone in the royal family killed her. After his father exiled Nully and him to Japan, Lelouch vowed to destroy Britannia. These goals are actually comprised of 3 parts, or you could look at them as 3 separate goals. Destroy Britannia, avenge his mother's death, and create a gentler world for Nunnally. In this ideal place, people would show kindness to each other, even if they are complete strangers. Nully and Lelouch would no longer fear being pawns of the Empire. There is an interesting difference between the goals and motivations of both Lelouch and Tanjiro in terms of helping out their sibling. Tanjiro based his goals on directly helping Nezuko, whereas Lelouch's indirectly affects Nunnally. Instead, he chose to focus on the selfish and selfless goals of creating a new world through destruction. Lelouch Lelouch never considered even looking into a way to cure Nunnally of her blindness or crippled legs. That is except for turn 24 when he mused on the idea of using Geass to cure Nunnally's blindness. I guess Lelouch never considered the possibility or decided to focus on changing the world instead, which is a stark contrast to Tanjiro, whose goals do affect the world but on a micro level. He'll make the world a better place by obviously killing Muzan, but nothing earth-shattering like Lelouch. One more thing to point out here is that since Lelouch's goals are more about making the world a gentler place than actually helping Nunnally specifically, he could accomplish these things theoretically without her, which is what happens during the Zero Requiem. That's not the case with Tanjiro. While it is true that killing Muzan is important to him, I wonder if he could pursue that goal if his main goal of curing Nezuko was no longer an option. Either it was deemed impossible or she died. He has shown in previous episodes to absolutely lose it when Nezuko is in danger, even doing things that are hazardous to his health. And I'm not saying that Lelouch doesn't do the same thing, nor that Tanjiro's response isn't justified, just noting how important Nezuko is to Tanjiro's life. As he told Zenitsu, the box is more important than his own life. So I don't think he could actually go on without Nezuko like Lelouch did with Nunnally. When it comes to the actions that Tanjiro and Lelouch take to help out their siblings, we again see two different approaches among them. When it came to helping Nunnally, Lelouch had two different approaches in taking care of her. During their initial time in Japan, Lelouch was never far from Nunnally. He didn't trust anyone besides Suzaku to take care of her, and in general no one wanted to help out anyways. Things would change in Ashford, where Sayako, a member of the Ashford family, would take over for Nunnally while Lelouch was doing other things. The family took them in because of their ties to Marion. Lelouch followed C2's way of life and kept Nunnally at a distance since she's important to him. He never told her about Zero, the Black Knights, or any of his other plans. By lying to Nunnally, it was his best chance to keep her safe. Tanjiro keeps Nezuko with him at all times, even when people have offered to take Nezuko under their protection, which even Tanjiro admits might be a better idea. He would rather have her be with him at all times, including during the many battles that the two would partake in. Let's now compare and contrast these approaches because they both have pros and cons. Because Lelouch kept Nunnally at a distance, he's not always around to protect her, which is how she's been kidnapped so many times. In his defense, he did make sure to have people to protect her, but it's simply not a perfect substitute. She was also kidnapped by an immortal and a powerful Geass user, who both knew about Nunnally, which proves that keeping her hidden and unaware of things was in fact a good idea. However, despite this, the lies would come back to bite Lelouch when she wasn't pleased after learning the truth, which led to the conflict from turn 23 to final turn RE. In final turn, Lelouch had to explain his motivations to Nunnally, and despite her best efforts, instead of addressing the points that Lelouch made, she then pivots to focus on Geass, which wasn't really relevant to his plans. When thinking about the idea of keeping Nunnally at a safe distance, one of the reasons why I think Lelouch acted this way is because he will hesitate when someone close to him is in danger. We see that with Shirley, for example. So keeping Nunnally at a distance helps him focus on the task at hand. And despite what Mao and V2 did, the majority of the time Nunnally is safe in the story, so I guess we can conclude that for the most part, his approach was effective. Since Tanjiro is always on missions to hunt demons, Nezuko is always in danger. Now against lower level demons, Nezuko can take care of herself, but against the stronger ones, like the 12 Kizuki, there's a real chance that she could die. Now thankfully she always happens to reveal hidden powers at the right time to save Tanjiro and other characters in his group. So plot-wise, it actually benefits Tanjiro to bring her along, but that doesn't mean that putting Nezuko in constant danger is a good thing. Nezuko is Tanjiro's reason for living, so when she's in trouble, he tends to freak out, and this makes his actions somewhat contradictory because at one hand, he wants to protect her and keep her safe, but then he brings her into a war zone with some of the most strongest demons that could in fact kill her. So Tanjiro's selfish need to have Nezuko with him at all times could actually get her killed despite his best intentions. But on a positive side, outside of battle, Tanjiro is much happier and calmer with Nezuko around as other people around them. By keeping her at his side, he never has to worry about her. She's all he has left from his family, so I can understand why he wants her to be with him at all times. Now, one thing I have not done when doing the comparison of these two situations is discussing the situations themselves, because if you factor the context of each, it's not really fair to be so harsh on one approach versus the other. Nellie is crippled, both being unable to see and walk. She can't assist Lelouch in his plans even if she wanted to, and Lelouch couldn't bring her along if he wanted to. Whereas Nezuko is a demon and can defend herself and others. Also, Nellie is a human with free will, whereas Nezuko is under both the curse of a half-incomplete demon and the hypnosis to see all humans and some demons as her family. This means that Nezuko does what Tanjiro wants with no objections. I imagine that if Nezuko never turned into a demon and was simply working with Tanjiro to kill Muzan, then she might object to his plans and not seem as docile and obedient. Luckily for Tanjiro, Nezuko is very low maintenance. She basically sleeps all day like a cat, and Tanjiro doesn't have to feed her or help her move around. Now when you compare it to Nunnally, it's quite the opposite. She requires 24/7 assistance, which is something Lelouch couldn't do while running a rebellion. Another thing to consider is that Lelouch is never far away from Ashford and R1, so not having Nunnally with her at all times is never really a problem. And since they both live in the dorms, it's debatable if he's keeping her at distance at all. Now in R2, it's different because Lelouch is never with Nunnally and relies on his best friend Suzaku to take care of her. Despite the differences in approaches, Tanjiro and Lelouch both show the same level of love and care to their sisters. Given Nunnally's condition, Lelouch had to do so many tasks that we would consider to be menial. Even just the thought of having to take care of someone who can't see or walk must be very difficult and stressful. And despite that, Lelouch always did it with a smile. And even during the Zero Requiem, after using Geass on Nunnally, he broke character to express his love for her. And in the latest film, Lelouch of the Resurrection, he left Nunnally acknowledging that she can take care of herself. I do wonder though if that would happen if Nunnally was still blind. Either way, Lelouch does whatever he can for Nunnally, even if that's letting her go. Tanjiro feels the same way and does whatever he can to protect and help Nezuko. He has even fought the Hashira, the 12 Kizuki. It's that desire that motivated him to join the Demon Corps in the first place. Since Nezuko is a demon, Tanjiro has to be extra careful of sunlight and early on from other demon slayers. Even though Nezuko travels in a box, there are still times when sunlight can be a factor. As I mentioned before, Nezuko is low maintenance, so Tanjiro only has to worry about protection and sunlight. But just like Lelouch, he acts with kindness, never acting nor treating Nezuko like a burden. One final thing I have to address is a complaint that Lelouch can be overbearing at times with how he takes care of Nunnally, and you can argue the same thing with Tanjiro. In a normal situation, I think this criticism is valid, but considering how dependent Nezuko and Nunnally are on other people, I don't see a better way for anyone to take care of them. What should stand out more is that Lelouch and Tanjiro chose the harder path to take care of their siblings, and smiled the whole time when most would cry or abandon their responsibilities altogether. With Lelouch, it's even more commendable because he accepted that the person that Nunnally became is how she's going to be until the very end, where Tanjiro held on to hope that Nezuko could one day become human. What we can take away from both Lelouch and Tanjiro is an example of how you can show love and care to siblings in your own life. Thanks for watching, and as I always say, the world is not a dark place, and tomorrow will be a good day.